This is a modification that I'm going to do to the governor. Since we use full manual valve bodies in it, they do not use any parts of the governor anymore, no flow going to them at all. So I'm going to use the governor housing and the sleeve as another support. I'm going to machine everything down and install this bearing into it, then turn this down, and this will slide into it and act as another support. I have done this in the past just by lightning parts, and it's in one of my other transmissions, and I had a little bit of a shake in the car after I did that, so I'm going with a bearing this time. All right, back from machining down these parts. This is the spool, big piece that has ironclad rings in it that went inside here. I have this part machined down to fit into my bearing. My housing piece, I have the bore machined down so the bearing will fit into it also. And I'll be back with them all pressed together. All right, I'm back from pushing the parts together on the press. This is what it looks like with the bearing inside of it now, holding in between these two parts. So to assemble this, you just like before, the sleeve just slides on the output shaft. There's a snap ring that holds it on. Before we slide this down in, you're going to want to put your one-way clutch in, and it just bolts up through here, then up through the bolt holes here. We've talked about the one-way clutch here real quick. Since my car is a low horsepower stock Eliminator car, it only has about 400 horse in the engine. One thing we do to reduce some drag in the transmission, like everything I'm doing with the rollers and the bearings, we only put half the rollers and springs back in it. So there's only 6 rollers and springs in my one-way clutch. Once you get some higher horsepower, which I don't know where that point is where you would start to spin this. So depending on how much horsepower you have on what you do with your one-way clutch. Once it's bolted up in there, you can put your park paw and your park gear in there, and the park paw, slide your shaft down through. Then bolt it down, and that's it for this kit. Bolt everything back up. Once this is through, you can flip it on its side. You can put your low reverse drum in, put your ring gear in, and there's a snap ring that holds this ring gear on, and then it'll hold it all itself in there. One other thing I did while I was at my shop was I took the case with me and deburred most all the sharp edges on the side of the case and all the casting flange stuff, and cleaned everything up with a wire wheel so it'll get a coat of paint here coming up. And the other thing you want to do, you got to think about your shifter before you assemble everything. My shifter is a turbo action, so I had to get another shaft for it and another arm for it, so it's a spare, so I don't have to take out a part out of my other transmission to put in this. So that's one thing you might want to think about is your shifter on your transmission, and get a spare one. Okay, my case is all painted. I started doing some final assembly. I have my new shifter shaft through here with new seal. I started assembling the bottom part of it, the governor kit, number 9 thrust washer, the roller bearing, and the planetary gear set in it right now. One other thing we do in stock Eliminator, a lot of the guys do, is we loop our cooler lines together. We don't run coolers. I've never had a heat problem with any of my trannies, and I've had 800 runs on my first transmission and with no heat related issues. And sometimes I'm not very kind on my car. I've made 13 runs in 4.5 hours 3 times before in my car like this, and like I say, I haven't had any heat related issues in the clutch packs or anything. And if you're wondering about my stand here, it's just 2 milk crates stacked on top of each other with a piece of plate welded to it, and I have a hole cut in the bottom so it sits flat. And I like to assemble my transmission so gravity's helping me when I'm putting parts in instead of laying on its back, which helps out a lot. And then when I do get to the valve body part, I just leave the milk crate bolted to it, flip it on the table, and it sits flat, and it can't rock and roll on me while I'm putting the valve body and the pan and everything on. So we're off to the next video.